open on the camera on a microphone will also go onto the YouTube channel. So please bear that in mind before we continue. Thank you everyone for coming along this afternoon. I can see there's some new people here and a few people that have come along to the previous webinars last week. We wanted to get everybody together to share good practice and also to try and help you along in this challenging time that we find ourselves in. We're all trying to find out how to use online platforms for distance learning and maybe grappling with how they work. And around that, today we are going to specifically focus on using Teams for delivering meetings, for holding meetings, look at the functions it has available within meetings, but also at the same time, we will have a look at how you organize those meetings and get people to come along to them. We will pause at relevant points this afternoon and take questions, but this isn't going to be a long session. The idea of these little small bites of information are that you can pick up bits of Teams, learn it chunk by chunk, and then master it by the end. So I'm just going to swap screens. I'm going to move over to the live Teams itself. So you can see there we've got the Office 365 landing screen. If anybody's been through the DFE funded project recently, this would be where you and your pupils land, unless your member of staff has been using Outlook for communication before, and then you'll go directly to Outlook. The idea here is that you've got all the apps that you need. You can access them vertically on the side, or you can launch them from the app launcher on the top left-hand corner. We are primarily going to work in Teams today, but we will also take a look at the calendar app. The calendar app is the same calendar that you would see within Outlook, and we are going to work exclusively in the online version. So if you are somebody who likes to use the Outlook desktop software, you can still do that, but you will find more and more that you need to work in a web browser or in the online world where everything links up. You can have an app for Teams, and that's perfectly fine. It's the same experience whether you use the app, but today we're going to use Teams in the web browser, and I'm using the Microsoft Edge browser here today. When you come into your Teams, you may not have quite as many as I have here, but you'll certainly see 1 or 2 or 3 at the top there that you're in. And the first thing you're going to want to know is, well, how on earth do we start to get meetings organized? And then once we're holding them, how do we manage those meetings? So we'll start initially at the very beginning. On the left-hand side here, we've got what's called the Me space. They're the things that relate to you and the apps that you use and you have access to. If you click on the calendar app on the left-hand side, it will display your personal calendar. And then in here will be your space in the day to organize meetings or put yourself reminders, however you want to organize your calendar. And I know some of you will prefer a paper diary, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute this replaces it, but if you're organizing things like distance learning lessons, it can be quite useful. So it may be tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a quick half-hour lesson on maths. And that maths lesson might be around, let's say, number. In the attendees box, you can either enter everyone by their email address. So here's a colleague, Deborah, and I do want her to be there because she's the parallel year 4 teacher to myself. And then I might want to enter pupils. So I can enter pupils one by one. So I start typing names. It could be that there's Al, and there might be in here as well, Robin, but that's quite time consuming, particularly with 30 pupils in a class every time I set one of those. So one of the things that would be advisable to do are set up email groups and then pop all these email addresses into a group. We're not going to cover that today because really that's management of your email system and organization of that. But then you could just add in the name of your class or the year group, and it would then have them all cascaded and neatly bundled up in that year group or that class group tag. You can, just like your normal calendar, add people. It's an optional. So if I thought that it might be something that my head teacher wanted to dip into, I'm going to add in her there, and then anybody else that it's relevant for. So this is very much an internal meeting with pupils that are at the school and staff that are employed by the school. It's going to be 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I don't think that's quite long enough, so I might just extend that time. You've got your drop down neat half hours and 1 hours, but this is going to be a 45-minute session. That's all set up for me. Don't want to do it as a repeating event, but you can have it repeating regularly, or you can go to custom. And then you can choose all sorts of custom-made repeat functions. If you want your pupils to be notified of this, then you can add a notification in a channel. So here where it says add channel, you click it, and then any teams that you're a member of, and we covered teams and channels in the last webinars, but we'll briefly recap today. So if it was my primary classroom I wanted to be notified, the primary class team is the whole team, and then inside the team I've got channels, and there I have only a general channel, but I want the general channel to receive a notification in their post section, and we'll go across and see what that looks like in a little bit. You can add physical locations in the school, and when we get back to face-to-face teaching, that's quite useful for things like indicating you're going to be occupying a room, maybe it's the meeting room, or you've got a particular room in the school. And then down here it might be the details, so please make sure you are logged in for our live lesson. I'll go back and correct that typo. Lovely. And it can be as much in there as you wish, and you can format the text as you see fit. And then you're ready to set that meeting, and we press send, and that will appear in the calendar of the people that I've added in, but it will also appear in their inbox if they've got the notifications turned on to get responses about when they have calendar events set. That's a personal choice. What it looks like over here, if I go into that primary team, we covered posts last week, but here is my numbers lesson, and there it's set ready for tomorrow morning, and that is the text I put in the agenda box. Therefore, everyone that needs to join that meeting, it's easier than going to calendar, particularly for younger pupils. They get used to coming to their post, checking their posts, they click the link there, and they'll be straight into the Teams meeting. I can have policies set as a default for how I want meeting events to run. And there are in the Teams admin center certain educational policies that set defaults, such as when people can join the meeting and when they can, when they're held in the lobby, like you were held in the lobby when you joined today. But if I forget to do that, or if I'm not quite sure, if I go back into the meeting once it's set, I've got this bar up here called meeting options. And I can go into the meeting options, and it will give me another raft of choices to make that will affect the way that this meeting runs. And you are going to, if you've got pupils there, make sure that you have control. So the lobby is like the waiting room. If you're going to the doctors or the dentist, it's the comfy chairs you sit on before you get called in. Well, the same works with coming in here. You could say who can bypass the lobby. So you could say everyone, but I certainly would not recommend that with pupils, because they'll get into the meeting before you, and anything can happen before you arrive. You can limit it to people in your organization or guests. And then down here, I normally change it to only me if I'm a teacher and I'm going to have a live lesson. Again, instead of having to come in and change this manually each time, you can raise a support ticket, and in the Teams admin center, there's policies that can be assigned, meetings policies, that will mean the defaults that you want will be assigned, whether it's a class team or a staff team. So there's no option to bypass the lobby now, and you can have those little announcements that come up in the middle of the window that says a certain person has joined and do you want to admit them or not, or just a notification to let you know that they've come in. If you don't want that on because you think it's going to be distracting for the pupils, and I'm going to turn it off in this instance, it goes off. Who can present? I don't wish for this maths lesson for pupils to be sharing their work, so I am going to limit it right down to only me. If you wanted to name certain people, you could say specific people, and then you could pick the people that you've invited, and you can say, well, a certain pupil can or can't, but I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to limit that to only me. And then can people that are in attendance in the meeting unmute their mic. If you're working with pupils, of course you want them to have a dialogue with you. You are going to set expectations about meeting procedures before you get into it, such as make sure you join with your cameras off and your mic off. That can be set as a policy again. And then if you want them to talk to you, leave that on. But if you know you just want to talk at them, you can turn that off. More than likely, you're going to want to have a two-way dialogue, so you're going to leave that on so they can unmute and then mute their mics. And I can press save, and that's all locked in, and that's taken care of. So when I go back to my meeting over here and I close that down, close that one down there as well, those choices that I had are locked in for my maths lesson tomorrow, and then pupils will simply come into class tomorrow morning, because if this is the end of the day, all the pupils have stopped doing remote learning lessons, or I've Any key worker children I've got in with me are no longer in school and accessing Teams. This is ready for them to come into their class team tomorrow morning, click the link and join the meeting. They can equally come into their calendar and use it unless you've disabled calendar for pupils, and then they won't be able to get in there. If you were arranging a meeting, or let's say you were trying to arrange an open evening for parents, you may not want them to see each other, unlike you did with the internal lesson there where you had staff and pupils. So if it was a meeting where after school you were going to have an open evening and you were going to showcase the school, you could come into here and you could set it up. But there are better ways to manage that from the calendar app rather than the calendar tab here in Teams. So if I go back to the landing page, or you can go to the app launcher if you're in Teams. I'm going to go back to landing page. And I open up calendar. I think I'll open it in a separate tab so I don't overwrite what I've got there. This is the same personal calendar that you see in Teams. So whatever you enter onto the calendar this side, it will sync to Teams. Whatever you enter into the Teams calendar, it will sync back to the calendar here. And if you're using the desktop version of Outlook, it's the same options that you flick between at the bottom with your email on the bottom left there and your calendar in the middle. The same things will appear. So let me go back and check. There is my maths number and here is my whole school meeting. So tomorrow night, we'll say at 5 o'clock. In fact, let's make it a bit longer. Let's go into the full editing options there. We're going to say it's from 5 o'clock to 6:30 to give people a chance of when they want to drop in. We're going to say this is open evening for the school. You may want to have this for a parents' evening and so forth. You can add your normal school staff in. So I'm going to add in the head teacher, and it might be Deborah again. There she will come. And that's all well and good. Now, you could offer the parents an optional slot there, but you may also want to make sure that parents can't see each other. So if I added in a parent, I'm going to add somebody with an external address. So there's a parent, and I'm also going to add another parent. Now, we don't want them to see each other's email addresses. So up here in the response options tab, we can change some formatting. We don't want the parents to be able to format the invite to other parents. We want to remain in control of who's coming, only the people that said they were coming along. So we're going to switch that off. You can also hide the attendee list. So when you tick hide attendee list, it will hide the email addresses of other people that are coming, and you will only see your own. Down here, if you want it to be a Teams meeting and you're setting the calendar invite up from this side because it's external, you flick it across to enable that it's a Teams meeting, and then it will appear in your calendar so you can come in and have a Limes Teams meeting, and it will also put the Teams meeting link in there. Once you've got it all set, you press send. It will schedule in the calendar here. If I scroll back down to the bottom, there's my open evening, but it will also, as far as going back across to the other calendar, it will appear over here. You might need to refresh just to get it to pull through. If I refresh my calendar there. And then the people that are invited that way externally will not see each other's meetings. So with a bit of luck, that will show up on this side. So it's just loaded up my calendar. And there is my open evening. So I've still got the internal lesson that I set directly here in Teams, and that shows up in my calendar when I went the other way. This I set from the calendar app, and it shows up here in Teams. It's just when you've got those external participants, if you want to hide email addresses from each other, whether it's for GDPR compliance and privacy or for other reasons, you do it in there. There is not an option, if I went back in and edited it here. Somebody just got their mic on. If they could just mute that for me, that would be fantastic. You went to the meeting options there. You still have the same meeting options that you had in the previous example when we were looking at the lesson. And what we wouldn't be able to do is be able to mute that and stop any parents seeing each other from there. So it's really important that you remember those two routes in. They're exactly the same thing, but for different audiences, they're important. Once we've got that sorted, it's either going to appear in the calendar of the external parent, or it's going to appear in our calendar. So if I pop back over to Teams, and being here now, all I do for those people that have just joined is click that link. The reason the maths lesson shows up in the post is because I chose to link it to a team. I didn't choose to link to a team or a channel for the open evening, but what I did do is decide to make it a Teams meeting so we could come in and use the Teams meetings features. So they'll get a link in the meeting invite itself, but they'll also be able to click on their calendar. So if I open that up, they'll be able to click that join meeting button there. So there's two ways in. You're either going to get your email or you go to your calendar, you click the join link, and then you either end up in a lobby waiting for the member of staff in school to let you in, or you're going to go straight in. Jumping back over, before I go in and talk about anything else, are there any questions regarding setting up calendar meetings and how to organise that? Nope. Okay.
Yeah, Martin, sorry, I've got a question about if pupils have access to the calendar, to their calendar.
Yes.
Can they set up meetings between themselves? And is there a way of disabling that?
Again, this all depends how your Office 365 and Teams have been configured. There are policies that you can set in Teams Admin Center that either disables the calendar entirely for pupils, or it would disable them being able to have any private chats or discussions with each other. So it's got to be set from the admin side, but as long as you raise a ticket for that and get that sorted out, then yes, you can stop them doing that. If you've disabled the calendar altogether, that's another reason why they can pick up meeting invites from posts, because it's not entirely dependent upon them having the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Was there somebody else with their hand up there? Mrs. Crofts, or was that? No, that wasn't Mrs. Crofts. Okay, no problem.
That was me.
Yeah, sorry. I thought suddenly it all clicked into place for me. Any other questions from anyone else here today? No? Okay, I'm going to jump back over. Once you are in a meeting, there's lots of different ways to manage it, and there's also quite a few features in the meetings bar itself. So I am going to stop sharing the example here, and instead of jumping into a live meeting, you will find quite quickly, if any of you have tried to do it, try to run 2 meetings at once on your computer, and your computer will soon start to get upset about that and tell you can only use your webcam and microphone for one purpose. So I'm not about to jump into this one here, but what I am going to do is jump back into the meeting we've got going, and I'm going to reshare the screen that I can see. So you will see yourselves back in the view I've got, but don't be too worried. It will become quite familiar to you in the way that you're using this. So up here we've got my notification. I'm recording the meeting for me, and you can see all the people that we've got here today on the meeting bar. Now most people have got the new meeting experience enabled. If you don't, I'll show you what to do that at the end of this section. If you haven't, you have a bar across here in the middle. If you've got the new meetings version enabled, it's the bar at the cross at the top. But don't worry, if you haven't got it enabled, it's one click and a restart of Teams and you can have it here. To see people that are here in Teams, you click the meeting bar on the side and then you will be able to see all the participants. If you're in an educational tenancy, you will be able to have an arrow pointing down to a line underneath, and that arrow pointing down to the line underneath means you can export a register that shows you everyone that arrived at the meeting, when they arrived and when they left. It's really useful as well if you're teaching in a distance learning scenario, because you can keep tabs on pupils when they come and left and check they were there for the whole meeting. It's sometimes useful as well if you've got a staff meeting going on and there was quite a few staff coming and going. You could just get an idea of who arrived at a certain point and who wasn't able to stay for the whole time. So there's lots of different ways that you could use that to export a log. The other things that you can do up here is having a chat. So in here I will see all the people that are chatting, and you can also put your hand up as well. So that shows that you've got your hand up, you're waiting to contribute. It's worth telling pupils and staff about that. It's a good way to wait for a natural pause point in the meeting, and you can see when people are coming in. Once you've finished and you've made your contribution, you can pop your hand down and then that little notification goes away. I'll do it again just because you haven't seen it from your side. Hand up, it tells me I've got that number of people, only one person with their hand up at the moment, but it might be multiple people. The minute they put their hands down, it ticks back down until I've got nobody else with their hands up. So it lets me know when I've got things to look at. You can see here also you'll get notifications. So I've got a red dot over one of the questions, and I'll come back to that question in a little bit. Here is where you turn your camera off and turn your mic off. If you're running this out of a web browser, you may get a pop-up window at the beginning saying, do you want to allow access for your web browser to join and use the camera on your computer and the microphone? If you don't allow those and you ignore them, you'll probably end up with issues around the microphone working or the camera working, so you've got to press allow. If you're using the Teams app, it takes care of itself, so that's one of the reasons why people often use the Teams app. I've got a little rectangle there with a cross through it because I'm sharing my view at the moment, but if it wasn't, it would have an arrow pointing into the middle. That's where you can share content on your computer. It can either be a single program, and if I was using Word and I was giving an example to pupils of how I'd construct an information text, let's say I was doing some English in primary, that you could share just that Word program and then nothing else on your computer is visible to pupils. That's the best way to get used to doing things, or you can share your entire desktop. How that looks, and I can't show you because I'm sharing a screen already, it would flip out a tray from the bottom, and then over on the left you'd have share your entire desktop. In the middle you'd be able to share programs, and on the right you can choose things like whiteboard to ink onto. In the middle on the ellipses you've got lots of other meeting options. You can find out details about the meeting, so if I click that, it will tell me all the core details, and it will also give me the join link if I get rid of that again. You can choose as well, depending on the amount of people here, the gallery view. You can have it in a gallery grid, or you can choose the size of the grid so you can overrule it. So you can have 2 by 2. You can also have a 3 by 3 or a 7 by 7 grid. You can, if it's something more pastoral, or maybe you're having a meeting with staff, you can enable together mode, and when you go to together mode it will switch away from the grid view, it will reformat, and you'll see lots of people sat around you like they're in a lecture theatre. I've got someone there with their camera on, anyone else had their camera on. I would see you all sat here in seats looking at me. It's just a friendlier way of interacting with other people, and certainly when it's not necessarily a formal lesson, you can use this in lessons. It's another way to see people without having to sit there and look at them on a little grid. If I want to go back to the gallery view, they'll appear there and up you will go. If you have got anyone with cameras on, you can also disable cameras here by pressing turn off incoming video, and that will switch off the video for anyone coming in, and you can turn on incoming video in the same way. If you want to mute people, you can go to them individually over here. You can see I've got lines through mics, but if I wanted to mute someone, I could mute them from there, and that wouldn't be ghosted. It would just say mute participant. And if I had multiple people with their microphones on, there'd be a little box here called mute all, and I could just mute everyone in one go. You can additionally apply background effects, and a lot of platforms have this now, so you can have a full background maybe if you're doing a meeting with staff or you're speaking with a parent. You've got lots of fun backgrounds, but you can also add new backgrounds. Recently I was doing some storytelling in a school, and we were pretending to be Doctor Who and zooming around different locations, so we were using interiors of a TARDIS to set out that storytelling lesson. Down the bottom here, you've also got the ability to record. Now, I'm recording at the moment, and that recording will either go into the channel, and more than likely it will end up in the channel, or it can go into stream. Recently, there were some changes to the recording functions in Teams, so please beware if you post a Teams meeting to a channel, once the recording stops, and that's when I press the stop recording button there, it will post the recording of the meeting into the channel. And if that channel is a class team, it will be visible to the pupils and the staff, and it will stay there for 20 days. And there are ways to delete it, but it's not always the easiest. You have to go into something called SharePoint, and you find your recordings folder and you can take it out. Otherwise, it will stay on screen and available for everyone for 20 days, and a copy can be downloaded for staff. So that option is there for you to record. It's also really useful for recording lessons, and it's not the only way. You can use PowerPoint to record. You can use the Xbox feature if it's enabled on your Windows laptop, which is the Start key and G, and you could record there, and then you could upload your meeting into Stream. For anyone who hasn't seen Stream, I'll nip over into Stream in a little bit. Down the bottom, the dial pad is only going to work if your school has decided to use Teams to replace the telephone system, but not everybody has. So I'll just stop sharing that screen a moment and reshare the example I had on the other side, and I'm going to go and check the questions that we had there. So just popping over to pick up the questions. Okay, got a few, so I'm just going to do them in order. When our children log in, it says that their camera has been disabled by the host. How can you change this? So if you've got that notification, it means that there's a policy in place, and it's that policy manages the cameras for the pupils. So you need to go into Teams Admin Center and change that policy to allow pupils to be able to enable their cameras. Otherwise, it's a safety feature if you want it for your school. If you really don't want the chance that pupils are going to enable cameras and they're going to get recorded, it's down to the choice of the school whether you want that. So raise a ticket for your IT company, whether it's us or another IT company, and ask for that policy to be amended, and you'll be able to come in and use cameras. I've got another question. Is there a way that you can type on screen that you've shared? Yeah, so if you share the app that you want to use, whether it's a Word document, or you could open up over here, you could have a whiteboard on the go. So if I come into here and there's a dedicated whiteboard app down here, I often use this. If I open up the whiteboard, it works just like a whiteboard that you would have in the classroom in front of you. You've got most of the whiteboard options there, and then you can write on it. So whether you've got a stylus-enabled device, or whether you're still working on a screen at a classroom in school and all your pupils are out in a distance scenario, that one seems to be loading up really slowly today, you have a whiteboard so you can write on there. But if you just want to type, you could share any sort of application, just type straight into the screen. Carry on down the list of questions. Just going to mute that.
Let me just check it.
Got their microphone on. Would you just muting it? You are being recorded. Okay, let's carry on. Next question. How do you create a PowerPoint, then a channel? If you've got PowerPoint from Office 2019, or you've got the desktop version of Office 365 that comes from your Office 365, you can install it and download a copy, or you're using the online version, you'll have a tab in there. I think it's in the review tab from memory at the top, and in there there'll be an option to record. If you're working on an older version of Office below Office 2019, then the record function isn't there, I'm afraid. When you're sharing a screen, e.g. a PowerPoint, is there a way to also see the children? Yes, so as long as you've got new meeting mode enabled, you can have a screen shared and I can still go in between. So let me drop back over into here. Up here in the top, you go to your initials when you're in a team, and you go to settings. And then in your version, because mine is not an education version for the version I'm running for at the moment, you'll have an option to tick here saying enable new meeting mode. When you enable new meeting mode, it will then allow you to have meetings as a pop-out window, and Teams and everything else will keep running in the background. So you can then flip between your meeting and your PowerPoint, and you can see both things at once.
Martin,
so then
can you share your screen? We can't see what you're doing.
Okay, hold on. Let me reshare. Okay, you should be able to see it again now. Let me click on that again. So you click your initials up in the top right hand corner to show where you're logged in. This is in Teams. I'm in the desktop web browser version. You go to settings, and then under general for you, there'll be an option down here under display with a square box next to it. It will say enable new meeting mode. You tick that box, and then it will tell you need to restart Teams. And then what you will have is every time you start a new Teams meeting, your meeting will appear in a pop-out separate window. And that's what I'm running from today. You are all in a separate window, and my main Teams and every other program are in separate windows on my taskbar down the bottom. So I can be viewing the PowerPoint as with the pupils, or I can click on Teams down in the taskbar, or I can click the app switcher on my computer, and I can move between Teams and the other apps that are open. So I could go back to the view where I see everyone in the grid, or I can see them in together mode, and I can see the pupils, and they'll still be looking at the PowerPoint, although I'm looking at the pupils or reading the chat as it's coming in, which is exactly what I'm doing now. I'm reading your chat in the Teams meeting, although you're looking at my version of Teams that I'm demoing to you. So that's a way to move between the two. You mentioned something about allowing the camera and the mic. Yeah, if you're working at a web browser, when you come to enable the camera and the mic, if I duck back over, up here where you've got the padlock and you click the padlock, you will see at the beginning that you'll get options that'll be down the bottom here, whether you're using Google Chrome or whether you're using Microsoft Edge or Firefox, whatever you like. You'll get an option to allow the camera, and if not, it will say don't allow. If I go to site permissions as well, and I think I've gone off the screen for you. Let me just do that on there again. Site permissions. In fact, let's open up another window. Let me just bring that over so you've got to your view. I'm just bringing that across. Open up a new tab. Pop that in there. You'll get to, oh, it's not going to let me today because I'm working on a different window. So what you'll get is a pop-up window, and cascading where it says in private browsing in your view will be lots of different options. And if you didn't enable your camera originally, you can enable your camera and you can do it from there. Let me do a quick print screen, and I'll throw that into the chat for you, and so you can see it. I'll throw that in with a link I'm going to send you at the same time. So you get a link, and you're also going to get a link to something else to use later on. If you click that screenshot, it's going to come up in the chat. You'll be able to see the options towards the top are to allow or disallow your mic or your camera. So if something's not working and you forget to click it originally, that's where you then do it thereafter. And most web browsers work in a similar way. As I said today, I'm working out of the Edge browser, but they all have very similar options there. The next question, someone said about the whiteboard, that's fine. Can you show how to do the register again? I certainly can. So if I'm in a Teams meeting, if I get rid of that tab and I'm in a live meeting, let me swap over from here and go to the meeting that I'm using with you. So you'll see yourself back again now. If I was in here with all the participants that I had in my meeting, if this was an educational version, because I'm running this out of the business version, the original meeting host, up near these dots at the top here, you'll see a flat horizontal line with an arrow pointing down to it. You click that and it will export as an Excel spreadsheet everyone that was in the meeting. So that's available there for you if you need to get out all the people that attended from the meeting. Let me jump back over to the other side again, and I'll come back and take a few more questions. Going back to where we were, you were going to show how to update Teams. That was the one I showed you about adding the new meetings mode that we went back and did in the end. See gallery view, but not a shared screen. Miss Laws, are you able to expand upon that at all, either as another question down this list, or you can unmute and speak to me if you want? Say about seeing gallery view, but not a shared screen. Next question.
Yes, it was because you were obviously demonstrating things to us, but you weren't sharing your screen. But I think you've shared it now.
Okay, all right. Thank you. It's not possible to share a video from YouTube or similar platforms so children can hear the sound. You should be able to put a YouTube video in. So when you go to, that's not necessarily a meeting thing, but if you were in here and you were in a new conversation, you could either go into edit mode and then you can add the video from your stream, and I've yet to come back to stream and I will show people where that is. You can add your video if you've taken a YouTube video and you've put it into your stream, you're hosting it from there, or you can click the link button there and you can insert a link to the YouTube video. The only caveat I would add there is that if parents have put any restrictions on a child's computer at home, or they've got any sort of restrictions on their broadband, the video may not play. And often in school for pupils, the YouTube doesn't pull through because the filtering normally takes it out. If they can't hear the sound, more than likely that's some setting on the computer rather than anything to do with Office 365 or Teams. And how do children view a recorded lesson? So the recorded lesson would be exactly as I've just showed you there. If you've recorded a lesson and it's gone to stream, so let's go over and do stream. Stream is an app itself. If I open it up, it lives in Office 365 and it's a place to store your recordings and organize your recordings. So you can upload to it, and those videos that I said that will appear in the post, you could upload them into here to create a library for your class, or it can be for the whole school. Or if you've recorded in PowerPoint, if you record on your laptop, you can upload them to here. So it would very often then your uploads go in on my content, your videos. I haven't uploaded any, but they would all cascade down here with this thumbnail there and the details out the right hand side. Then when you come back into your team and you're here and you're making a post, you click your upload from stream button, you click on your video from stream. If it was you recorded a lesson starter review, or you've done some mini plenaries and there were bits of the lesson and they were going to inform the learning as pupils are going through, you add them in here, you press the send button, and then pupils just click the video in the post and they watch you as if you were there with them, but it's a pre-recorded version. Some more questions. When sharing a video, is there a way to always share the audio automatic feature rather than having to remember to turn it on every time? Is that in relation to videos that are in posts, Wendy?
So when sharing your screen with your class and you want to share a video that you've opened,
yes,
there's a little tiny button and I always forget to turn it on. Is there a way of just automatically having that on?
Are you talking about the
audio button?
Yeah, include. No, there isn't that I've ever discovered. No, I haven't found a default policy for that. I've been able to enable, but if anyone here has recently done that, obviously things keep evolving. But last time I looked for that was about 2 weeks ago, and no, it was to do it. When I asked Microsoft why they left it that way, they explained to me that they didn't want the audio from the computer that you're working on to be automatically included in case it disclosed something that you didn't intend to, or you were previewing and queuing up a video outside of Teams or something and you didn't want the pupils to hear it. So that was the explanation for that. However, if anyone's found a way to do that, please do share. I'm always learning as much from these meetings as everybody else.
Okay,
Helen, no problem at all, Wendy. Helen's got, why do stream video links work from the iPad but not from the laptop? I am not entirely sure about that. They should work universally, and if it's in stream, as long as you're either running it from stream, because you can play videos in stream itself, or whether you're running it from the link you've pasted into the post, it should just work. It might be a setting to do with the audio on the laptop rather than anything to do with stream, but that would be something that probably needs a little bit of investigation on the two devices. Wendy, we've answered yours, so we'll go on to Kirsty's next. So you were not showing full screen when you showed us how to type right on the screen. All right, okay, I will go back to that, no problem at all. Let me nip back over to there. So if I shut down that, I'm going to go from that. So in the app launcher in the top left-hand corner, you go from most screens, but I'm going to go from the landing screen. You can open up Whiteboard. So I'm going to open it in a new tab. When Whiteboard loads up, it works like a whiteboard that you have in school. So here are some that I've worked on previously, or I can start a new whiteboard there. If you want to have a mimicked whiteboard, you can open up the whiteboard, and then depending on whether you have a touch screen or not, you can either type directly onto the whiteboard, or if you've got a touchscreen device or you're working at the interactive board in school, you can use the tools across the top. And then whatever you're working on here, you can show to the pupils if you're sharing a screen. You can also share it to them. So you can send them a share link. And when you create that share link, you could copy that link and you could drop it into the chat, and then pupils can start to get into the whiteboard as well if you want to collaborate together. There's also settings at the end. You can export what's on the whiteboard so you can get it as an image to keep that. You could also do things like insert sticky notes and type onto them in here. And then when you've invited people to come along and share with you, they could also, once they've all got access to your whiteboard, they could all start, even though they're at home, pupils could post-it notes and sticky notes onto the surface here. So if it was gather your ideas about, and they can scale their post-it notes, and when they've had some content, they can move them around. And then you could end up with all of your pupils, if you give them the share link, all being in here and working on the whiteboard. It can be written text, because you can have a text box there. Then you can grab your text box, move it around. It's up to you what you like to use your whiteboard for. It's pretty much an open book. Just going to jump back over and take the next question. What is better for schools, to use Teams in a browser or a desktop? The question is a good one. If you are working with older pupils, I would say use it as a tab in a web browser. If you're using with what younger pupils, certainly Key Stage 1 up to lower Key Stage 2, the app is easier just to open up and come straight in, and you're in your team and you don't have to worry about signing into Office 365. If you are using a web browser, try and keep it to 3 clicks. Have a shortcut to click to get to Office 365 and then sign in, and then go from there to click Teams and you're in Teams, and the rest of it's going to be in Posts or a link from Posts to take you somewhere else in Teams. I've got someone ask another question. Someone's opening about, you open a book to share online or another platform, say, and you can have both screens and open and write on top of the book as you can in Zoom. So you could author over the top if you wanted to, and if you're going to ink over the top, you are best to do that. So you can have, let me go across. The way that I would normally do it is to grab a shot of something I want and then probably go into OneNote class notebook, pop it on a page and author over the top. If you're after inking tools to ink over the top, then normally that's a native piece of software that I would use on the computer, like the draw tools over here in class notebook. And if it loads up in a minute, the draw tools at the top allow me then to write over what I've pasted on the page when I capture a snapshot. If you're after something to ink directly over the top, as in just take the live PowerPoint and ink over the top, a lot of people often have other products on their laptop. I haven't found something in Teams itself that allows you to ink over the top. So it's either grab a screen grab, paste it in here and throw it onto the page in OneNote, use the draw tools, or you can throw it onto the surface of the whiteboard and use the draw tools. But what I haven't ever found is that you could author over the top of the PowerPoint and then save that PowerPoint. I would end up normally using a piece of software from somewhere else. If anyone else has got an experience of finding a function to do that, then you can by all means share that with us, but I've never found a way of authoring directly over and keeping what you've authored. Yeah, so there's turning on system audio after you share the screen. Is that manual? I don't know of an automatic to choose share system audio as a default. That one there is something that's, I don't think is a policy that you can enable that and make sure it chooses that.
Martin, can I just interrupt you? Yeah, if you're the presenter and you're sharing your screen and you forget to switch on the system audio at the start, if you tap your cursor against the top of the screen, a bar will drop down. And it should allow you to, there's various settings there where you can share system audio, stop presenting, or give the presenter, to somebody else.
You can. I thought the question was, and thank you for raising that, because the bar's up there and you can't share that when you're screen sharing as well.
No, there's a little option there where you can share your system audio,
Yeah. And I think someone asked one of the questions up above as well about having the system audio sharing on as a default. I don't think I've ever found a default for that, but that is the quick. And you can also do it from the system tray when it pops out when you're sharing your screen as well at the bottom. Thank you, Esther.
Forget that,
Yeah, they do. Any other questions? Either unmute, I'm happy to speak with you, or anything you want to pop into the chat itself. Have I exhausted you all? Okay, I am going to repost the feedback link. I know many of you are really time pressure, but I would love to get any feedback either from this session or anything you'd like to have for future sessions. I've just put the link back into the chat there. Also, if anybody wants to ask any other questions, I'll be in here for a few more minutes yet. But thank you very much for coming along this afternoon, and we will be running more of these sessions. We've got 2 more to go this week. So there's one again, I believe, Wednesday, and the one for Wednesday is around using forms in Teams and how to collect information in forms. And then there's another one later in the week as well, which, forgive me, I can't remember what the subject is, but we will come back to that. If Tiana's on here, I'm sure she will throw it in as well. So there's going to be more of those that you can join into. So if you want to sign up for those, do it in the same way that you have before. If you find any particularly useful, please do share with colleagues. They can always go and watch the recordings of these. We record every single day. You can go and watch the recording back as well if you want to. So I'm going to stop the recording now. But as I said,